This is the Property Development Book Club podcast. Please be advised that the views expressed are of the individuals and do not represent their employers and should not be taken as advice. Please do your own research and seek advice from an appointed professional. Welcome to the Property Development Book Club podcast, where in this episode we're talking about the skills gap and the difficulty of talent acquisition, particularly in the built environment. Today I have an esteemed group with me. We've got a mix of business owners, recruitment specialists, talent acquisition specialists, so the perfect group to be speaking to this very topic. I'm Hattie, I'm a development surveyor by background and I now work in PropTech. And if each of my panel members could introduce Haben, so you can go first.
My name's Haben. I'm a director at Ham & Clark, focusing on interim management and permanent appointments within the private and public sector.
My name is Bola Ogunmefun. I'm a structural engineer and director at Civil Engineers.
I'm Hayford. I'm the founder of the Land Collective, and we work to get more young people from diverse backgrounds into the built environment sector.
My name is Boakye and I work at Hines as a talent acquisition and DEI specialist.
Thank you very much. So I suppose the things we're going to talk about today are what are some of the causes of the skills gap, some trends that we're seeing in hiring, some innovative ways to try and overcome the skills gap, and importantly changing the culture in the real estate industry that we know needs some work. So let's start with some of the causes. Kevin, can you start with what do you think some of the reasons are that we have a skills shortage at the moment?
I think it's lack of information of what the sector's about, what it represents and the opportunities within the sector. So I think many people have kind of in their mind made it up to be very much when you think of property, real estate or even construction, people think of just on-site labouring, and it goes so much further than that. And I think there's been a lot more education around what it is in order for people to understand and be attracted to the sector.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Sarah, you're doing some really good work to raise awareness.
Yeah, I think I agree with Kevin. I think a lot of it comes down to general awareness, and not a lot of people, when you mention property or construction or even planning and things like that, a lot of people can put together the dots. They just kind of have perceived like notions of what that's like.
Yeah.
And that extends even down to schools, you know. So when you have career education days or even when they're just talking about careers with advisors and counsellors and things like that, usually property, construction doesn't even come up in conversation. It's usually the big ones: law, banking, engineering, finance, and that's kind of where young people's minds goes to. So I think it's up to us as an industry and other kind of organisations within the industry to kind of go out, reach out to young people and tell them what our sector's all about, really.
Yeah, and that obviously should help in the longer term, but we actually have, we have issues. You need people in your business today, right, who have the skills. So what have you been doing, Bola, to help overcome that?
I mean, it's an interesting question because ultimately, when you need someone in to help your business, you would go down the traditional route, go to recruitment and try and find people who fit the mold of fit that, if you like, the spec that you see in your mind, but actually it's like a lot of things, that perfect person doesn't exist. So I think business owners like myself and even recruitment consultants probably need to think about how we can think about the attributes that will fit in a business or in a team, and how we can give them the skills that they need to grow within that team.
So more personality fit in the knowledge that skills can be learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's one thing that I learned recently. It's something called a DISC profile, and it's understanding about people's mentality and what sort of where do they sit? Are they introvert, extrovert, and how can that sit with your business? Because ultimately, there is room for different types of people within a business. I think if we get the people the right attitude, then we can try and give them the skills. And I think the onus is on us to try and be more training focused. Try and so people can see how they are growing within a business.
That's really interesting.
I think that's one of the reasons as well that we do have a shortage of staff is that I think lack of investment in training. But at the same time, if you look at the built environment, you've got a diminishing workforce, and then you've got the take up isn't the way it used to be, and then you've got an investment, a boom in investment. So it's a cocktail for a shortage of staff, really.
So what's that for you, Kevin? How's that actually reflected in what you're having to do to entice people? I mean, you work for one of the biggest landlords in the world. You would have thought it would be just people walking through your door, desperate.
I think we're having to kind of remodel ourselves and how we sell and pitch the business. So it's not just about come and be an employee now. We're having to almost kind of sell like a journey or a story. And people, especially your millennials and your Gen Zs, really buy into what am I creating? It's not just, I built City Hall or I built wherever it is. It's, it's the journey that it goes on. And so I think we're having to kind of remodel our pitch a lot more and talk about the journey and talk about this story. People feel like I'm a character in the story, and I think that sells a lot more to people.
That's really interesting as well, because I think often people just think of recruitment as being a function of HR, and it's really not. You're selling your business.
Yeah. We're literally having to sell on a day-to-day basis. We are attracting talent. It's that talent acquisition. We're remodeling job specs. We're remodeling how we pitch the business. We're remodeling even the job roles in the departments. We're having to kind of rebrand ourselves in order to be a lot more attractive to the market now.
And so on this point about Gen Zs, do you think that it's effective? This is really like generalistic, but should Heinz be on TikTok to be like raising awareness? Does that work, or do they see straight through that?
I think Gen Zs are quite good at seeing right through things.
Yeah.
So the brands and employers that tend to do well on TikTok don't just talk about, what they do as a company. Oh, look, like we just built the Shard recently and this is how much we spent. It's more about their company culture. Like, what is it like to actually work here? Here's what we're doing related to sustainability and the environment and things like that. So I think they've gotten really savvy in kind of sniffing out rubbish, if that makes sense. So you don't exactly need to be on like every single social platform as well. But I think going back to what he was talking about in terms of selling the business and kind of what you do, I think that also appeals to Gen Z too. So a few years ago, Land Collector has been running for 5 years, as a bit of context, but kind of like 3 years ago when we were going into schools and colleges to talk about a career in the sector, it was all about, kind of, oh, here's how much you can earn and here are the kind of projects you can work on and here are the kind of teams you can get involved in. But now we've had to change that drastically because people don't care anymore about that kind of thing. I mean, some people do, depending on kind of like their background and things like that. But most people, they kind of just look at us and like, okay, and so we've kind of had to change up our style a bit, and now it's more about, okay, your journey, like Kevin said, and what you can actually contribute to your local society as well. So if it's that, okay, here's how we're working to kind of get to net zero, or here's what we're doing in our community to kind of bring more people together, those are the things that people now want to get involved in, which is quite exciting, I think, for the industry as well. And I think it speaks more towards that element of kind of like the squiggly career, so kind of not staying in one thing your whole life in the long term. But I think that change has been quite important, and I think employers need to also make a note of that moving forward.
And I would hope for small, you run a niche practice, right, Bola? I think that makes, for me, as a smaller business is much better able to tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because, yes and no. I mean, there's so much we can do as a small business to get better at it. But ultimately, there's that challenge between, delivering for your clients, but also bringing people through and pathing a career for them. Because ultimately, people, like you said, people want to feel like they contribute, like they had some say or some input into things, And I think what we're trying to do as a small business is to give people the ownership, the autonomy to say, this is what you are doing, this is what you're working on, this is what you're delivering, and it's all you. This is you. So, own it, enjoy it. If you enjoy what you do, then does it feel like work? Or does it feel like, something
Yeah,
that you
it's
are
much
working
more
towards?
satisfying.
Exactly, yeah. So I think that's where you're trying to make it a little bit more interesting for people.
And how do you find that with the...
I think with organisations now, like at Heinz, it's all about your employee, value proposition. What does that look like? How, is it meaningful? Is it real? Stories from internal people that are actually in the organisation, giving you, insight into what it's like in this organisation. If it's not, real, authentic, meaningful, and it has to be, aligned with your strategy, I think, like Sarah said, people will see through it. But using platforms like TikTok and, whether it's Instagram or all the other platforms, you have to be proactive to attract talent. You have to be. You're not just gonna put a job spec on LinkedIn and think, okay, I'm gonna get the right hits here. That's not. I think you have to be a bit more creative. And what you spoke about, smaller organisation, we should be training people, and it is about rethinking your workforce, understanding that we do have an aging, amount of people, aging skilled workers that maybe I can attract to come in on a part-time basis, while I have a pool of talent coming in, like yourself, that are interested in the industry, and we're training. Because realistically, not everyone you bring in as a school leaver or a college leaver is going to stick it out all the way through. So you need to have a pool coming through all the time. So then the process then becomes maybe out of 10 people that we brought on, 3 made it. But those 3 people, you've trained them, they're going to be loyal. Because I don't know what your take is on, but I feel that this new generation, you can maybe tell me differently, but 2 years, 3 years, they're gone.
Yeah.
If I'm skilled, 2 years, I've got my experience here, I'm going to look somewhere else now. How do you breed loyalty? And that's by training them. Of course, the way you treat your employees as well is a lot more, it's critical now, because I think the world we live in now, and the work environment we are now, we're disconnected with our work families or work environments. And most of our managers are probably not trained to manage remote teams. So you're quite disconnected. So
there's a skills gap in management as well as skills gap in actual doing the work.
Why do I, after 2 years, why do I need to be here? And that's when we go back to the EVP. That is so important. We talk about it with organisations all the time. Why should I go to your organisation over this organisation? And that's the biggest part now, retention. I can't afford to lose A, B and C, let alone bring in somebody new to replace what this person's provided me. So there's a lot of thinking organisations are doing now, and a big part of it is retention. I'm sure Heinz is doing this.
Yeah, no, I think, kind of following on from that is the people management aspect. That's so crucial. I think we can't overlook how important people management is, because people want to feel valued as they go into a company. Every single day I turn up, I want to be my essential self. I don't have to put on a mask or a character. I want to come in and be myself. So as we attract people, we need to show them that we're very human and we're very normal, and we also have the same struggles. I think the pandemic, we kind of had Zoom meetings. You could see people's books and people's dogs and people's cats and people's kids, and those things are what people want to see. They want to see that you're actually being authentic and being yourself as they join your company.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And do you think, obviously there's been a lot of movement over the last 2 years, which I imagine in some ways has made it easier to pull someone away. Do you think people are going to become more risk averse over the next, if the markets keep going the way they are? Do you think people are going to think, oh, actually, no, you're going to need more to pull them to a new company? They'd rather stay where they are?
I think there are 2 types of people. There are people that are going to look at it and think, actually, it's a great opportunity to go and make more money elsewhere, because some sectors will boom slightly and be able to have opportunities. Some people will do that. I think what we have seen over the last 12 months in general in the market is there's been a lot more movement over the last 12 months, because people held off their moves because of COVID, sat tight, didn't want to be made redundant, whatever, just sat there and waited. And over the last 12 months, people, especially having had bonuses early part of this year, have moved on. I think as we head into the next 12 months, I think people will sit tight, generally. Not as much movement, I don't predict.
I think it's a wider market now. One of the biggest trends you'll see is remote recruiting. So I don't need to work for an organisation in London anymore. I can be anywhere up and down the country. So if the projects are better in Scotland, if you're that type of person and are confident or are interested in that project, then you may go to Scotland. Not that you'll be there every day, but I think you're seeing that especially in the new generation, especially just generally now because of the remote working, it's giving you access now, which probably you may not have even thought about before. So I think retention is important. I can't stress enough that, you know, holding on to your people before you then think about, okay, I need to add. But I think you touched on it, the economy now, you know, people are thinking, what's it going to look like, you know, over the next few years? I think there will be some challenges, you know, financial struggles with the built environment, but, you know, we're already kind of lacking skilled workers anyway, so people that are highly skilled are not going to have an issue finding
over provision. I think on that point, Bola, I understand you have particular expertise in timber and off-site, which are obviously quite new but very highly in demand markets as the world moves towards more sustainable development. So you've perhaps in a situation where you can't get people to work with you because they don't exist, because no one's worked with CLT or whatever it is. Like, how do you find that?
I mean, it's interesting because everyone wants to get involved, but not everyone's got the skill or the experience. So this is where we're talking about training, understanding, getting the basics right in terms of the basic skill set that they have, and then we can introduce them slowly. So for us as an organisation, that's actually understanding what they need, you know, in terms of skills, what and where do they want to be in a few years' time, and if you like, we talked about before about managing that journey. So it's very rare that I get someone through the door who says, yes, I've done timber before, I've done this before, you know. We have to say, okay, you've done something similar, you know, but we're here to help you go through it. But part of that journey is not necessarily that we hold their hand. It's still up to them to, you know, to take ownership of their career path, but it's what they get and what they put in is what they get out, you know. But I think the point is for us is that if we can manage that journey for them and help them get to the expertise that, you know, that someone like our business requires, it's you know, people would like that. People like that. People want to know that they can grow, you know, in as a technical expertise in whatever. So one thing I've noticed is just really understanding what people want at different stage of their career. So at the beginning, they may wanted to know about timber. We've taught them about timber. You know, okay, they might leave, but then what do they want next? You know, and I think that's the clear thing, just to keep on, you know, thinking about, you know, what do they need.
I think in that space, like you said, not everyone, you know, doesn't have that skill set. So you probably are interested in their softer skills, you know, how determined they are, what they're liking to research, and then managing the technical side yourself, you know, as in training them. But if you've got those softer skills managed, understanding what your business needs, I need people that are strong at research, or, you know, whether it's, you know, communication skills. I think it's that, isn't it? And then you add in the technical side, or your team add in that technical side.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think depending on how balanced your office is will depend on what you need next, you know. So, you know, there could be one role, but you've got lots of people who are very, very technical. You get same role, same level, but maybe you want people a bit more softer skills, or the softer skills, you know, because then it can balance out, because ultimately we are providing a service, but we're providing a service to people, you know.
So sometimes those people that are quite technical are probably, the comms aren't as strong in the communication skills with the clients. It happens.
So yeah, that's where the training, you know, to try and give them a bit more rounded skill set.
Gives you a balance in the office as well.
I think transferable skills is something we really need to kind of consider as well in the shortage. There are people that have experience from other sectors that can transfer into, you know, property, real estate. So we need to consider those people quite strongly as well.
Do you actively go out and look for those people?
100%. We actively go out and say, if you have A, B, C skills, you may be able to fit into what we do. And like you're saying, upskill as you go along.
Target them, because there are similar, you know, when you look at storage or you look at, you know, transport, you know, they have the same kind of agendas or interests. Not all of it, but there is a way of transferring their interest. Oh, have you ever thought about built environment and going out and getting them at early stage as well in their studies as such? But yeah, there's definitely, you know, they have the same interest. You can divert people's, but then that's about the targeted, you know.
Yeah, it's been intentional. I think it's the core skills. Like, for example, property, you tend to find a lot of people ex-army. in the property sector, and that's because there's a very, very regimented, they're organised, they follow a process. It's, we're going in this direction and we're not deviating, and so they do very well when it comes to property construction development. So, like you're saying, I think there's so many soft skills we can pick up on and build the rest as we go along. Hi, my name's Kevin Boakye. This is the Property Development Book Club Podcast Series 2. Like, share, subscribe.
Hi, this is Sarah from the Land Collective. This is Season 2 of the Property Development Book Club podcast, sponsored by Mood in Space. Be sure to like, share and subscribe.
Hi, I'm Hattie and this is the Property Development Book Club podcast, Season 2, sponsored by Mood in Space. Like, share, subscribe.
Hi, this is Habs, Director from Ham & Clark. This is the Property Development Book Club podcast, sponsored by Mood and Space. Please follow, like and subscribe.
Hi, this is Bola, Ogunmefun, Structural Engineer, System Engineers, and you're listening to Season 2 of the Property Development Book Club podcast.
Yeah, it's funny, as someone who's just been very kind of property focused for the last decade or so, I've not, because my work's always been property, I've not really thought like, oh, actually, logistics and things like that, storage actually have a lot of very similar skills.
And it's targeting, I think when you look at talent attraction, of course, I can go as wide as I want, but if I focus on those skill sets and then go wider, I think you have a better hit rate as well. It's my take on it, because you could go and try and find someone in retail that might want construction, but I think you would need a different approach. Whereas if you're looking at those, like you said, logistics, it might be quite similar. So it's the thinking behind it, and I think that's what you're seeing a lot more now, is trying to steer people away from, what they're looking at the moment to maybe the built environment.
Yeah, it's interesting when you reference the squiggly line career, and that very much speaks to that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just following your own strengths.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also kind of what I've done in my life as well. So I kind of started off, I got my entry into property through interior design when I was at uni, even though I didn't study interior design. But that's kind of where I got started. And then I went into commercial retail surveying and then ended up starting Land Collective, which is my own business. So I feel like my thing is more kind of passion-led and kind of soft skills-led, and kind of like you kind of find where your calling is depending on kind of what you do, who you interact with, and kind of where you kind of find your strengths. So yeah, I'm a big testament to that.
Advocate, squiggly line.
Yeah.
And I think there is a fear, if you're, in your career, there's a fear of having the squiggly CV. People, there's the attitude that, what have you been doing? But you're saying that that's not really a problem so much anymore, maybe.
I think for me the key, and Habibi may say different, I think the key for me is always why the squiggly line. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be a reason why. People have various things that go on. COVID is going to leave a lot of squiggles in a lot of people's CVs. People have personal issues that they go through. So I think traditionally we'd say, you need to do 4 years to have a good CV. Like we're saying now, it's more 1 to 2 years. But why? It's understanding, have you moved for a project? Have you moved to diversify your skill set? Have you moved for a better opportunity? Were you headhunted? Have you moved following a boss? I think just looking at something on paper is very easy to say, dismiss someone. But I think actually engaging, that's where it comes back to engaging this person, understanding their journey, understanding them. Who are you? Why have you done this? And sometimes when you actually understand why people have moved 3 times in 5 years, you think, you're good moves.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And I think myself as a consultant, I'm always speaking to employees and telling them, look, take control of your career, learn what your value is. Not so much with the new generation, because I think they do it automatically. They're out there every 2 years. But I speak to people that have been in the same organisation 10, 12 years. It's something they've enjoyed doing, but they've never gone out to see what their value is or looked at other organisations. And I think now, being, as I keep saying, disconnected from your work environment, I think a lot of people are looking around now. And if there was a period of time, and you may agree, it was really candidate driven. Candidates were really making their decision as who they want to work for. And a part of it is what you said, they follow a leader. Some people follow a leader, and that's one of the, I would say, is the employer value propositions is, who's your company being led by? what are the skills that people are looking for, who to be led by. So, yeah, I think it's a different, I guess, thought pattern for people that are new into it, 2-3 years, but there are people that 10-12 years, and I will always push them, learn what your value is. I think it's important.
And so because you tend to work at the more executive level, how do you find, how open are people to upskilling and retraining and making
a lot more now, and I think a big part of it is you, the person, the employee. And I do feel the new generation are a lot more, I guess, happy to do their own research. But I think a long time ago, people needed to have their hand held. I think now, giving people some direction, they will go and do the research. So I do feel the built environment probably doesn't market itself as well. But I think podcasts like this nature and people watching them will want to learn a bit more. But there's still a lot of work to be done in the built environment. You look at financial services, they market themselves, they pick people up from university. How many construction organisations are there at universities,
Yeah, I think it's also a case of, I don't know, I think it's also a case of just getting people to understand what they want to do in a few years' time. It's almost like, we talk about this 5-year plan, because that would kind of determine whether a new move after 2 years is a good move. Because squeaky line is fine, but, if you have a plan that I want to do this by that time, it could be a financial goal, it could be a personal growth goal, it could be anything, I feel once you have that, it's easier for that individual to know where they want to be or what they want to do and not get swayed. Because when I was working as an employee, I've got recruitment agencies call the office often. They'll recruitment office. They'll literally, there's nothing just every day. They'll literally call the office and say, I want to speak to this person.
Yeah.
I want to speak to this person about a project.
Yeah. Or a conference.
Or a conference. So I'm like, yeah, hi. Who's this? Like, oh yeah, you don't know me. You haven't met. And that sort of thing. And it's when the market's hot, that's always going to happen. So. And I think it's about giving people a opportunity to be a part of things, to contribute. So for me, I knew that I wasn't moving until I finished a certain project, and once that project's done, we'll see what's next, because I knew that was important for me. And I think if we can do that
I think that's what you're finding is, I think, throwing money at it. What was it? Someone taught me a long time ago. Money doesn't buy loyalty; it just rents it for a while. So an employer trying to keep someone just by paying them, not really what I feel now. That's not it, especially in the built environment, And
I think, like you've been saying, I think people's needs in this time are so much more than money. People want comfort. Yeah. People want flexibility. Yeah. Someone... They want to have a say. They want to have a say in what the organisation... Yeah, exactly. People want holidays.
They want a development programme. I want that. I want to see what my development programme looks like. I want it to be a bit more clearer. Organisational learning, that they need to do that. It's not.
And this is, one of the biggest problems we have in the real estate industry is the culture, and this is pointing to a cultural change. Yeah. I've always felt when I was surveying that it's always like the best surveyors who get promoted, right? It's not the best managers, and then that's, I think, a key thing, is you were saying, having actually teaching management skills to surveyors or people in the built environment.
I think it's so essential. I think, like Bola was saying, looking at when is the project going to finish, and don't wait for the project to finish before you think about giving someone an increase. Go 12 months before. By the time that project finishes, they're still going to be happy. And so I think it's just being tactful, really, if we're going to retain people in the industry.
Got to be proactive now.
Yeah.
They know that organisations have to be proactive.
Yeah. Pretty much. I was going to say as well, in terms of being proactive, it is literally, it's so easy for us to get caught up in what we're doing, but it is a case of really, looking after your people, and your people will look after you, and almost like, because we was talking before, but, just making sure that the basic needs are met. And we haven't got every single problem correct, but, you start to understand that you are dealing with people outside the office and inside the office, so it's a case of just trying to just make people as comfortable as possible.
And managers may not be able to do it. Part of it is to do with HR. you know, smaller businesses probably find it a lot difficult,
Yeah.
you know, hiring a HR, you know, member of HR to focus on that. So it's probably a lot more difficult for smaller companies because the manager's trying to win new business, manage a team, you know, and then trying to understand each employee, you know, that's why it's a cost, but, you know, probably a cost worth.
A cost worth it, yeah. I think kind of following on from that, I think another key thing is utilising different resources to maintain your people. So I think, you know, having diversity groups, having ERG, so employee resource groups, having mentoring means that somebody doesn't just have one point of contact. They have various points of contact. You know, they have their ERG lead they can go to, they have their mentor they can go to, who can give them maybe what you as a manager can't give them. I think that's one thing, I mean, talking specifically from Heinz, that we do, that allows people to have different points of contact and different viewpoints, because that also helps to keep someone in. So maybe I might not be able to reach my manager because he or she's away for a week, but my DEI leader's there, or my ERG leader's there, my mentor's there to be able to help me.
We haven't got that close touch anymore. We're not all in the office, you know. You get a feel for someone, or you know what they was up to last weekend. You're becoming a lot more distant now. So yeah, it is challenging. It is challenging for employers. It really is. And having so many different groups, you get a better feel of what that employee is as a person, or what their interests are. You know, it's not just monetary anymore. It really isn't.
And I think that's kind of something that I'm trying to actively encourage the employees that we work with as well, is that there's lots of power in collaboration. So if you know that something is going to take a while for you to implement internally, or you're really struggling with it, then you can collaborate with different groups, different networks. There are lots of external mentorship programs that you can connect with and things like that. So, you know, you don't all have to have it internally and have it be like a really expensive exercise. You can collaborate with other groups who do it and have been doing it for a very long time, very, very well, to get that, you know, the output really.
Yeah. That's a really innovative way of thinking about it, because I think the automatic think is, oh well, I can't afford a massive HR team right now, so I can't do it. And it's like,
and
no,
I think it's like a negative thing, because I think quite often they think that you have to do everything in 10, you have to do everything on our own, and that's not true at all. You can probably get further by working with somebody else, or
I mean, we outsource our HR to a big company, so we're small.
it works.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting conversation. Thank you. I think what I would love to hear from each of you is, you know, if we've got people who are listening, who are thinking about where should they go next, what route should they take, what would be your specific advice to people in this world, in this market, to sort of take their next step, Habs?
I think if you're interested in construction, the built environment, I think speak to leaders, reach out to them, connect to organisations, follow organisations. I think the more you learn about these organisations, you will see a fit for you as an employee. Because, you know, construction isn't just, we spoke about it many times, it's not hard hat, it's not steel toe cap boots, there's regeneration, development, project management, procurement. There's so many avenues you can go down, and then you have the sustainability, building safety. So I think it's about learning more about organisations and ones that fit your agenda, who you are as a person, and then furthering that research into the roles that could fit what your natural skills are. You know, I never had a natural progression to consultancy. I worked in finance for a long time, enjoyed people-centric roles that I did, then moved into consultancy. So, and also what I'd like to say is the first role you get is not going to be the forever role. You know, it's about seeing a gradual progression in yourself as well, and slowly you find out that what you liked when you was 20 to 23 may not be what you like between 26 to 29, and it's having that kind of motivation when you're going for roles. This ain't my forever role, but I'm learning and I'm learning. And I think that's better, because I think some people kind of put all in, oh, I'm going to do everything in this role. It's not that way now. You know, things change, people change. You know, your managers change. You know, organisations' agendas change. So, you know, Balfour Beatty might be the place you want to be between 2023, 2025. It may not be led by the person you want it to be led by. So, I think it's doing research, really. I think it's important.
Yeah, I like that. Bola, how about you? What do you think you should to entice people into our space? What do you say?
YouTube. Honestly, I even watch YouTube about my own industry.
Yeah.
I watch a day in the life of structural engineer. Like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll tell
That's
you
a bit
what,
different from mine.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much information out there, and then you can. I actually see things that I watch because they do these things where they have these architectural students put on their portfolio, and it's been crit. And I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. I think there's so much information on YouTube.
Yeah.
If you really want to understand the industry, there's lots of different. I mean, there's one channel called, I think, B1M, which is a great one, a great introduction to the industry. There's lots of day in lives in estate manager or structural engineer, architecture. And I think YouTube is a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to get insight into the industry.
Fantastic, and obviously Property Development Book Club's on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
So just a little plug there. Sarah, how about you?
I think bit of advice I'd have would be to reach out to more groups. I think that especially at early career level, when people kind of want to break into a sector, they're interested in the sector, they would usually go on LinkedIn, maybe director of JLL or something like that. Let me just message them, and that could be great. It could work out really well, but I think going after more smaller groups like this one, or like the Land Collective, shameless plug, or I don't know, Black professionals in construction, going after smaller groups, because then you can start building your network and speaking to people who do so many different things. So you can find people who do like management, or maybe they do estate agency. Like, you can find so many more people in smaller groups that are just part of networks. Exactly. And when you start speaking to people, you learn about their experiences and their journeys, and then you can kind of start to build your own. But sometimes when you just kind of look at what X person does online, you think, okay, that could be pretty cool. You get into it, and it's actually not what you want. Yeah, not what you want at all. So I think, talking to people, connecting with smaller groups, and just kind of forming your career journey from there, I think would be really useful.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of following naturally from that, I think my key thing is networking. Network, and when you network, don't just look for what can they give you, what can you give them back as well. I think that's really key, irrespective of where you are in the journey. And I think the other thing for me as well is values. I think maybe 5 years ago we talked a lot about cultural fit. I think that's gone. It's more value fit now. So whether this company value and does it align my values, if it does, then we've got a match made in heaven.
Great. Well, on that note, I'll say thank you all for joining me. That's some really interesting thoughts on how to retain good people, and also if you're looking for a new role, to maybe have a little bit more confidence that if you're a good personal fit, then the skills can come with time and good training. This has been the Property Development Book Club podcast. Thank you for listening. Like, share and subscribe. This is the Property Development Book Club podcast. Please be advised that the views expressed are of the individuals and do not represent their employers, and should not be taken as advice. Please do your own research and seek advice from an appointed professional.